Hey, Dr. Julie.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. We got a really special guest today. Any idea who it
hints?
is?
Any hints?
Well,
Should I be surprised?
He's a Paralympian,
Oh, well, then I know
gold
who we're
medalist
talking
Paralympian, Olympic wheelchair basketball champ, motivational speaker, past weightlifter, one of the best wheelchair tennis players in the United States.
A great person and awesome dad.
Mr. Jeff Griffin. Can't wait to have Jeff on here today. Title of today's podcast is Ain't Nothing Gonna Hold Me Down. Everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Skip Weiss. I have my amazing co-host with me, Dr. Julie Weiss. Dr. Julie Weiss. I was bringing in a German today. Yeah, Dr. Julie Weiss today. And we have the amazing Jeff Griffin with us. Jeff, how are you today? It's so good to see you, brother.
You know what? Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's easy to look good on the shoulders of giants. And so thank you for all you do.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. We really, truly appreciate it. You know, I've gotten a chance to meet you a few times at a couple David Meltzer events and then Black Diamond Club events. And it's been just an absolute incredible experience to always get to meet you, Jeff, get to give you a big hug, get to take pictures with you. You're incredible. I've seen you completely light up and take over a room with your massive energy that you have, Jeff. How do you do it all the time? I know you're a motivational speaker. Can you give us the nickel background on yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. That's two questions, Skip. First you asked me, how do I do it?
I told you it was going to be different. I told you.
I'm like, listen, I can do this. I can do this in one breath. Here we go. But anyways, thank you, Skip, for those kind words. When I do come out, I speak all over the world, as you mentioned, and I like to address the elephant in the room. You know, you mentioned that I was in a wheelchair, and I'd like to address the elephant about how good looking I am.
That's right.
That's
the old silver fox, Jeff.
Not
the
sense of humor.
No,
that's what lights up the room. That's what lights up the room is my good looks and my great humor. But a little background. You know, as a little kid, I always dreamt about playing football in college and playing on the big stage. I grew up in northern Utah, where they breed them to hate them, down south at BYU. And that's where I wanted to go play, was at BYU. I was a receiver. They were a college program that were just pumping out all-American quarterbacks left and right. And I wanted to play catch with the next all-American quarterback from BYU. And I remember telling somebody in my dream, and they just laughed at me. I don't know if you've ever mentioned that before. But they just laughed at me, and they told me all the reasons why I couldn't. They're like, Griff, you can't play football in college. You're too short. Some people are like, you can't play football in college. You're too white. Some people are like, you can't play football in college because you're too slow. And I'm like, okay, too short, too slow, too white. Okay, I get that. But what's interesting is this song that sings inside our soul. I've discovered over these years that is what is key. We've got to give our heart a reason to beat. And some of us are barely breathing and calling it a life. But we need to live a life that takes our breath away. And in order to do that, we've got to learn how to dream. We've got to learn how to listen to that song that sings inside our soul. But unfortunately, there's other voices telling us, you can't do this, you can't do that. And unfortunately, and what's sad is, when the biggest critic is, ourselves. When, we listen to ourselves and we accept what other people have said. And what I've learned here is, that most of us, we reject what we don't understand, and we base our possibilities on what we know. Or better said, other people base our possibilities on their limitations. And so if we're going to listen to other people's opinions, then we better make sure that we go to the right people. And so anyways, I'm not going all over the place, but, that was my dream, was to play football in college as a little kid. And fortunately for me, I just continued to chase after my dream and listen to that music. And I know that most of your listeners, their dream probably isn't to play football or to be on the big stage. in a college stadium, but I do know that everybody has a dream and everybody has a song inside their soul. And I would invite everybody to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not my dream, but their dream. Not my song, but their song. And here's what I've learned is that, people have compared me to Tony Robbins, but at a fraction of the price. Um, Other people have told me that I'm as motivating as David Goggins without the mouth. Others are like, Griff, you're as inspirational, as John Maxwell, but they're them and I am me, and the world needs me,
Mm-hmm.
just like the world needs you. And so, listen to that song, chase down that dream, and go after it.
You had said something just a minute ago where you get judged on other people's limitations. So they always set out to set your possibilities. When people look at you and they see a limiting factor in their head, they immediately think that what you want to do is not possible because they see the limitation. And I think those limiting beliefs are what really hurt people because they never see the true value of the person in front of them, or they never see how high that person can actually climb. They just limit themselves based on what they feel that person can do or what they themselves can't do. And why in the hell would somebody like Jeff Griffin climb higher than me? And I think that happens all the time, especially, dealing with people in sports. We're always being judged by the person next to us. Most sports are what have you done for me lately type situation, not how good has your career been? How good has your life been? And I found it very, very interesting reading up on you, Jeff, a lot, and getting to know who you are. And yes, you are very, very motivational. I've heard some of your just tidbit talks and small things on YouTube, and it's an incredible life story and an incredible journey that has happened to you. When you sustained your injury, Jeff, at what point in your life was that at? How did everything change so quickly?
Oh, in a blink of an eye,
Mm-hmm.
everything changed in an instant. And I always go around and say, you're only one speech away from changing your life. You're only one thought away from changing your life. You're only one step away from changing your life, in the good or the bad. And it all depends on where your mindset is. What's interesting is when I was in college, I learned in my chemistry class that 32 degrees is the temperature for melting. It's also the temperature for freezing.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on which direction you're going.
I like it.
And so for me, I had just finished one season of football. I tasted the sweetness of success, and I got to experience what it would be like to play on the big stage, what it would be like to play, on the first team instead of the scrub team that I belonged to, that year. And so I was home for the summer. I was painting the barn, and I was up 40 feet on some scaffolding. And the scaffolding and ladder went out from underneath me, and I fell straight down, straight legged, stuck the landing perfect if I was a gymnast, but I wasn't.
Okay.
I was a painter, and my legs came up, my back came down, and my L1 vertebrae exploded. And somebody told me that was like the perfect fall. I'm like, the perfect fall? No, I'm like, no, it wasn't. But like, yeah, that was a perfect. Your legs and your spine and everything just lined up perfectly to where the L1 vertebrae exploded inside my back, and it left me paralyzed from the waist down. And the doctors gave me a life sentence to never walk, never stand, never move my legs again. And that moment did change my life. It changed my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, 30 years later, I can say that I'm honestly grateful to be in a wheelchair. But at that moment, my identity was wrapped up in my physicality. Who I was or who I thought I was, what I was striving to do and be was wrapped up in how fast I could run, how high I could jump, how quick I could run my routes, and how good I could catch balls. And that was taken away from me instantly in a split second. And here I am next to an unpainted barn, unable to move my legs, unable to use the very tools that gave me my identity, and it was taken and stripped from me, and I entered that sauna of self-pity, as I call it in my book.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk to our listeners are lots of families, right? Or business owners, entrepreneurs, service people. And I think that can be related to just about any industry of, like, you thought you had everything going for yourself, and then this tragic accident, which at that time seemed like it was, the end of your identity, right? As you knew it. Was there a tipping point of what helped you to get past that, I guess, is what I'm curious about, because, right, that, I think we deal with that if it's parents, if it's the business owners, again, of maybe we get so far within our business, or just overwhelmed with our kids that we just can't go on, or it's that those hard truths that other people are setting upon us, or those expectations that we can't get past that. I mean, you literally, like, somebody else made that decision for you when you had that accident, that you had to make that change. But I think so many times we are limited by what other people put upon us. What tools could you help with our listeners to get past that?
Yeah, because, how can you tell somebody to be happy when they're sad?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell somebody to be optimistic when they're pessimistic. How can you tell people that, life's going to be good when all they can see is the bad?
Mm-hmm.
And for me at that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I was experiencing everything. In fact, I'm shaking my fist at God, like, why did this have to happen? And I was shaking my fist, and I was pointing the finger at myself and saying, oh, you're such an idiot. If you would have just, invested $60 on a lift, you wouldn't be in this situation. And so we beat ourselves up. We talk, hindsight's 2020. The key is how do I have 2020 foresight? And I think that's the question you're asking, right? Like, how can you be happy when you're sad? How can you be optimistic when you're pessimistic? How can you, be outgoing when you really just want to go hide and sit in that corner? And I call it the P squared mindset. You've got to have the P squared mindset. You've got to have this mindset. I call it the possibility principle. You've got to work on the possibility principle. And what's interesting is you've got to work on it when times are good. And you got to work at it, I call it the daily dime. You got to do the daily dime all the time. You got to do the daily dime all the time. And all it is just 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. And what you're doing here is you're just working on that possibility principle, as I call it. Because I believe it's the footings. I believe the possibility principle is the footings that holds the foundation. And I believe that there's 3 Ds that are at the foundation of every challenge and every problem that we have under the sun. And so for me, it was, I go, okay, sometimes we have to have some help to snap ourselves out of it. We need a mentor. We need a coach. We need somebody to snap, to help flip the switch and help us to reframe things. For me, I was in that sauna of self-pity, and I was wallowing around in that syrupy, sticky sauna of self-pity and just feeling sorry for myself. And I was trying to invite everyone into it to be a part of it. But it wasn't until I was asked a question by a prisoner at the hospital that set me free from my prison.
Wow.
What was that question?
That's a good question, Skip. You got to buy my book to find out what the answer is. No, I'm totally joking. But the question, and what's interesting is the answers come. A lot of times the answers come when we're not expecting it, and a lot of times we miss it. Fortunately, I was aware enough to get it, because they stopped feeding me in the hospital in bed. If I wanted to eat, I had to get out. It took me 30 minutes to get out of bed. Everything I did in ease took so much time, and 30 minutes it took me to get out of my bed into the wheelchair with the aid of 2 nurses. I'm rolling down these sterile halls of the hospital, just feeling sorry for myself, having one of those pity parties, and the tears are about to, are starting to well up and come over my eyes. I get to the cafeteria. You know how you're in pain and you want to be left alone?
Mm-hmm.
That is when you need to have a coach, and you need to have somebody the most. But what's interesting is we run away from the pain, and in reality, we need to run towards the pain. We need to face it, and we need somebody there to help us. But I just want to be left alone. And hopefully me sharing my pain doesn't minimize everyone else's pain that is listening, because I've learned that all pain hurts no matter the size. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody's pain here. And I'm not trying to have anyone feel sorry for me as well. But at this very moment, I'm getting my food on my tray. I go to the corner of the cafeteria because I want to be left alone. I put my tray down. I'm flavoring my food with my tears. And I'm just like, it was the worst day ever. And all of a sudden this tray plops in front of me, and I look up and I'm about to tell that guy to go take a hike. And it happened to be the prisoner who plopped his tray there. He was lifting weights in the prison, had an aneurysm in his brain, paralyzed from the right side of his body, couldn't speak, sorry. And in his slurred speech, he asked the question that changed my life. He looked at me, I looked at him, and he's like, "Why are you crying, dude?" And I'm like,
Why
"What?
are you crying?
Why are you crying, dude?" And I recognized in his slurred speech the question that he was asking me. He's like, "Why are you crying, dude?" And that right there was the question that was needed for me. At that moment, I flipped a switch, and I started to see things I had never seen before. I looked around the cafeteria, and I noticed there was a guy who was paralyzed from the neck down, and he had a halo screwed to his skull, and he couldn't even feed himself. He couldn't even move. Somebody was like feeding him food, and here I have arms that I can feed myself. The guy next to him was also paralyzed from the neck down, but he had some movement in his arm, in his hand, and so they taped a fork to his fingers, and he's attempting to try to feed himself. And by the time he gets his fork to his mouth, the morsels had fallen off his fork, and he was barely getting any sustenance inside his body. And here I am complaining about the fact that I can't run now, and I can't jump, and I can't do all these things that I once was able to. But that question, "Why are you crying, dude?" snapped me out of my pity party and helped me exit that sauna of self-pity and focus on the things that I can do instead of what I can't do. I can move my arms, I can transfer, I can hug, I can do all these things. And so I'm like, okay, these other things might have been taken away from me. I might have been given a life sentence to never walk, never stand, never move my legs again. I might have been given a 0% chance of ever having any kids, because that's the first function to go and the last function to come back when you're paralyzed. I get that, but I've got a new lease on life. I'm capable, and that helped me remind me, okay, how did I get here? How did I get to the point of playing in a collegiate level on a football team where everyone was telling me that you can't do that and you can't do this? How did I get that? And it reminded me of my greatness. It reminded me of those small things that I did that helped me get to that point. And that's what I did. That's when I deemed that little tool, as you asked, Julie, of, I call it the possibility principle. It's the thing that helps develop that P squared mindset.
I love it.
Jeff, you had hit a little bit on, you said the 3 Ds are the footings of the possibility principle. What are those? Is it determination? Is it destination? What are the D's that you have there that give you such a strong foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the possibility principle is the footings that the foundation, sits on. And so the foundation is the 3 Ds. And what I've discovered, as I had a chance to, after I got back from the Paralympics in 2004, I'm like, how did I get here? How did I get here? Like, I wanted to play on the big stage, in college, but I played on the big stage in 2004 in Athens, Greece, where the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games, originated from.
It's incredible.
How did I get here? How did I become one of the youngest, trust managers in the bank that I was working for? How did I always joke that I was given a life sentence to never walk, never move, or never stand again. 0% chance of standing, 0% chance of having kids. Some of the experts told me I gave me a 0% chance of ever getting married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. And my wife and I have 4 beautiful biological kids. And at this moment, I had 2 kids, and I'm like, okay, how did I get here? How did I get married? How do I have 2 kids? How did I make it to the Paralympics? How did I, become the youngest trust manager? And so I'm like, okay, so I started to sift through my broken back and shattered dreams and discovered these flecks of gold that I was living by, unconsciously. And so now I'm making it more conscious. And so I'm like, okay, so what are these? What is the foundation? What is the foundation that will help us overcome every challenge that is out there? And that's when I discovered that, it boils down to 3 Ds. It's desire, dream, and do.
Mm-hmm.
What I typically do is I dissect what a desire is. We take a look at the anatomy of a dream, and then we have some predictable, repeatable, and proven steps that will help you chase down that dream, that will help you climb that mountain, that will help you orchestrate and conduct the song that sings inside your soul, that will help you get the results that you want. Mm-hmm. And so, I had an opportunity to practice on some of the harshest critics called teenagers for 17 years. And, we were having such results. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this to the world now. And so I left that comfortable, consistent paycheck and left the classroom and started to share this message on stage. And it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful because it's so simple.
So with raising these 4 kids, Jeff, I mean, I look at desire, dream, do. This is a what do I want type statement. How am I going to get there? What do I want to have out of it? And then the why behind it. Like I can see the principles rolling out in these 3 Ds, which I think is just to hear them in the desire of what you want and the do it and the dream it. Like that is awesome. So how have you shown your children through, you got 4, you have 3 girls, 1 boy. Yeah. And what are they age and range, Jeff?
Yeah. So my oldest son is 22. And when my wife got pregnant 4 years after we got married, I'm like, all right, this is my miracle baby. Because we're consciously trying and, talk about some struggles, as a paralyzed man and every day being reminded that, you can't have kids. You can't have kids. And the evidence is stacked up against it. And so, when my wife became pregnant, I'm like, oh, all right, I wonder if he's going to come out with a wheelchair. I knew that was not the case, but I always wondered if he'd come out in a wheelchair. And he came out as a healthy, baby boy. And I'm like, okay, now he's a boy. I'm like, okay, who's going to walk first, him or me? And of course, he started to just run circles around me. And one time I'm improving. I leave my wheelchair in the back of my truck now, and I positioned my table and my couch and so I could fall and try to waddle over to it. And one time I was waddling down the hallway, and I turn around and there's my son, and he is imitating the way his dad is walking. I'm like, don't walk like that. But yeah, my son, he is 22 years old, and he is one of my heroes. I have what I call the Hall of Heroes, and my dad is on there and my son is on there, and he just inspires me every single day. And Skip and Julia, I've learned that, kids learn by watching. Mm-hmm. So much more than telling them.
They watch everything. And the funny thing is that they actually view your character through their eyes and not through their ears. And this is why children are taught to they visualize everything, they hear everything, but they're going to mimic you as much as they absolutely can. And it's the unsaid things to your children. It's the unsaid actions that you take with your wife and with your daughters. And, my son, Brecken's 12. We have his daughter, Peyton. She's 15 and a half. And, Brecken will be 13 in a month. And It's crazy how time flies. But what I find absolutely amazing as a parent is watching your children do things that you've never told them to do. And they do it. Like getting the door for their mom.
Yeah, say not the dishes.
Not the dishes. We're not talking about the dishes. But getting the door for their mom.
Problem in that household.
That's right. That's right. And the standards that my daughter sets for herself with the men that come in and out of her life, or boys that come in and out of her life, and this standard that she holds herself by, when I've never really talking to her about her standards. And it's incredible as parents, and it's rewarding. But I also think as a parent, it's incredibly important to look up to your children. I hope you enjoyed that first episode with Jeff Griffin. He was absolutely phenomenal. You do not want to miss the second part. You absolutely do not want to miss the second part. It's going to be up next week. And it is going to blow your mind because we dive into Jeff being told he had 0% chance of doing anything the rest of his life. So take care, everybody. We hope to see you real soon. Bye.